Welcome to In the Black, the podcast that shines a light on resilience, transformation, and the power of reinvention. I'm Aracelli, and each week, my co host Shannon and I sit down with incredible women who have faced some of life's hardest challenges, from personal setbacks to societal obstacles, and have emerged on the other side stronger, driven, and ready to make a difference.
On In the Black, we celebrate these stories of strength and success, diving deep into the journeys of women who turned pain into purpose, adversity into action, and now dedicate themselves to making the world a better place in their own way. They're here to inspire, share hard-earned wisdom, and remind us all, no matter how dark things may seem, life is cyclical and dawn is coming. So, whether you're looking for inspiration, motivation, or just a reminder that change is always possible, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to In the Black. Today's episode is a special one. We will be recapping the first 10 episodes of In the Black, and then kind of sharing our own purpose and passion for what we have going on and what we have going outside of this. Whether you've been with us since the beginning or if you are just getting started with In the Black, welcome, and we're excited to have you in on this conversation. So, hi, Aracelli.
Hi, Shannon. Wow, it's been a wild 9 episodes.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I never expected the turnout that we've had for people who have been signing up for In the Black, and just the amount of women who want to share their stories and who are doing something in the world. It's just incredible to see. And I'm so freaking excited about it.
And we already have a list starting to reload every day of new applications coming in. I just noticed that today and I was like, oh my goodness. So, yes, we'll be reaching out to the new guest really soon. We have already a few scheduled, so that's exciting.
I can't wait to see where this goes. And now we're adding the art to at least our Instagram account coming up shortly.
We've been mentioning, I think, the art here and there, and you've been working on Janet. So Shannon's been working on the painting, and this podcast is about overcoming and dealing with, this or that, and even Shannon has been struggling with being vulnerable in a way, if you will, and sharing the behind the scenes of her incredible art that she's been working on with Janet. So I kind of wanted to touch on that and how it's coming to the Instagram, and it's gonna be tidbits of here and there, and to kind of um, I guess bring it all together, the vision that we have with the podcast, with the guests coming on, sharing their heartfelt stories, and then the portraits that are coming along with that too.
Yes. So I'm super excited. I actually started with the most vulnerable portrait, which was myself. And I'm almost finished with that one. And then with Janice, I think I'm probably a little over halfway done. But I have been hesitant to share, and it's been so interesting to kind of journey into why that is and what's happening in my own life where I feel so vulnerable about it. And so as I'm painting these portraits, it almost feels like I'm not worthy to share their stories. And I know that's not the truth. This entire project has been incredibly vulnerable. Doing the podcast has been amazing. Just watching these other women who are willing to share their stories and their gifts, and so inspiring. And I am committing myself to sharing my own journey as I go through this and as I walk with these women that I'm choosing to paint, and share their stories and share the vulnerability of maybe feeling like I'm not good enough, or like my art isn't good enough yet, because it's not necessarily about my art. It's about the community. It's about creating something where all of us know that we belong and that we can make a difference with whatever life throws our way. And so I'm excited to start sharing the art and also extremely nervous, but I think it will
And I keep
be.
poking at her so she can, share it and send it my way. I'm just like, Shannon, send it over, Shannon.
Yes, yes, and I appreciate that. I do, and I'm really excited that following up this podcast, that is what we'll be doing. We're sharing all the most vulnerable parts, and so it'll be kind of amazing, I think, to see those come together. I recorded a video the other day, and I was like, oh. I can think of ways that this could really touch some lives. And then I was like, oh, that's terrifying. So I'm excited to see where it goes for sure.
I'm excited to see the behind the scenes and how it's all coming together on that side. So let's talk about a few of our guests that have been here. Our first guest was Janice, and she was a perfect one to capture and set the theme of what we were trying to capture. We talked about how there were legal challenges in Missouri. At the time, Missouri didn't have lifetime protection orders,
Mhm.
and victims were forced to endure further abuse if they wanted to extend protection, which is like crazy and something like I didn't know about, and maybe a lot of people didn't know. And Janice was a big part of that, um, in that creating that change for everyone. She talked about how what led to her to advocacy and create change, the fact that Janice was told by someone in an advocacy group that she would never be able to change the system, and then she proved it wrong. So that was like super cool.
Yeah, Janice is one of my closest friends, and I just find her to be an incredible human being. And seeing her fight and seeing that she was willing to do anything it took to protect the people who were in a situation where she had been was just such a powerful starter for me because the first time that I went on the news with my personal story, I remember getting so much backlash and thinking, I can't do this. Like, there's no possible way that I can do this again. And then I remember the second time that I went on the news and I walked up the steps going to the Harmony House and I was like, okay, Shannon, this isn't for you. This is for the next you. This is for the person who doesn't necessarily know that they're worthy. They don't know that they have what it takes. They don't know that there is a way to get out of the situation that they're in right now. This is for her. This is for the person who is where you were a year ago. And I walked up those steps and I thought, if there is an opportunity to help one person, just one person, to live a better life than what I was living when I was married, I'll take it. And I knew what was coming. I knew the backlash. Springfield, Missouri is not a huge town. And so I knew that there was going to be backlash. I knew that there was going to be people who called me a liar and called me crazy. And even with him being charged with multiple felonies, people still thought I was the crazy one. And it just goes to show the charm of a narcissistic abuser. But Janice was a huge part of me continuing to be strong in my own journey. And so I'm just so proud that she was our first guest because she really is a world changer and she's changed my entire world. And so I'm super grateful that we were able to have her on the podcast. And I I love the work that she's doing, and I just can't wait to see what changes she makes in Missouri legislature moving forward. Um, and she's just a beautiful soul. So that's what I have to
Yeah,
say
what a
about Janice.
what a way to start in the Black podcast with that. That was, I mean, to have that list of applicants before we even launched was mind blowing to me. Um, and I think I was just so scared and so nervous of how are we going to have people? How are we going to you know, get people to talk about, there's history and, whatever that entailed. And sure enough, it was just like they're right there.
I think it's kind of incredible how when you do what your heart is passionate about, things start flowing. And I think that when you called me and you said, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to interview women who have overcome things. What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, that's exactly what I want to do, but I want to do it for art pieces." And you were like, "Well, I want to have a podcast." And I was like, "Okay, let's just do it." Because I knew that I needed the structure of someone who could create something like the podcast where I could find these women who have a heart and a purpose and a passion for something. And I had this list and trying to decide who to paint first or what to do or how to even start that process was so challenging. And so the podcast just became this like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is perfect. I can actually discover their stories and see their stories, and it's exposing it to all these other people. And I appreciate you for being so open and vulnerable and just for taking that leap and listening to your heart, because so often I feel like that's where we screw up. We do what's expected of us or what we think the world wants us to do. And you were like, "I don't know why I'm calling you, but this is what's on my heart." And just that vulnerability, I think, was so freaking powerful. And I'm so excited to see what we do with that.
Yeah, I still cannot believe I did that.
And
Out
here
of
we
all
are,
the
10
times
episodes in.
I know. Out of all the times I thought about calling you, I'm like, "Nope, nope, that's just weird. Why would I call her?" Yeah, no, 10 episodes later, it's insane. Um, so we had Janice to start things off and kick things off amazingly. Very fitting for our podcast. And then we had our second person was Gretchen, who also reflected on this, the same, abuse, manipulation. So that was, including her father. Then we had Bunny and her struggles with school and dropping out, her struggles um, to kind of helping her pave the way to what she loved and finding those struggles. So it goes from a wide range of people that we've had, because then we went into Hazel, who had to hide her authentic self most of her life, living in a life, in shame and fear, and how she overcame that. Now she loves to make people smile and helps people to not compromise who they are like she did, and to be authentically herself. Then we got into neurodivergence with Darby, the struggles of going through that.
I just love that Gretchen's purpose is just to bring joy to the people around her. I think so often we feel like our story has to be so big and so like we need to be impacting thousands or we're not making a big enough difference. And in all reality, the people that we impact the most are our family, our friends, the people that are in our direct circle, because we're impacting them on a regular basis. And Gretchen is just the epitome of bringing joy to the people in her world. And so I loved having that conversation with her. I loved seeing where she had come from such a dark place, where she had come from, struggling with abuse and addiction and all sorts of horrible things, and now she gets to live her life to just bring joy to people. And then when Bunny um came on our podcast and she's talking about how her financial struggles prevented her from completing college, but she's created this life for herself, and now is also helping other people to complete college through her sponsorship. And it's just so amazing that so many people have turned their pain into purpose. And with Hazel, that was so apparent as well. Like you said, hiding herself and not being her authentic self for so much of her life, and then deciding she's going to be enthusiastically her and helping other people to live a life where they can live in enthusiasm and where they can be passionate about who they are, because we were all created to do something, whether it is just being a light in the people around us lives, or whether it is changing legislature for everyone around us, or whether it is creating a sponsorship for people who can't do the thing that you couldn't do when you were younger. Like, when we look at our lives and we choose to use our pain as a catalyst, the purpose that comes from that is so powerful. And I think that's exactly how In the Black started, because when we look at you and we look at me, you started writing your story when you got to Florida and you were like, oh my gosh, there has to be a way to use that. And that's where the podcast was born. Whereas for me, I was in the shelter taking an art therapy class when the idea for In the Black came. And that was years ago. And up until probably 2 years ago, I didn't do anything about it because I was like, who am I to do that? um, but we
Same.
can overcome the painful circumstances and situations in our lives. And when we do, we get to change the world around us in big ways and small ways. And it's really freaking powerful.
Yes. And Darby.
Darby, yes. Oh, gosh. So I never thought I was neurodivergent until probably the last TikTok. I mean, TikTok convinced me that I probably was a bit neurodivergent. So I've always been kind of an introvert. I remember one birthday party where I went outside and I climbed a tree instead of being part of the festivities inside.
Mm.
And because it was just so overwhelming to my senses. And I've always had issues with wearing clothing because clothing hurts my skin. Um, and so, like, learning that those things are actually, there's actually a reason for them. I'm not just some weirdo, um, is so helpful. And so, talking to Darby, I think I could have talked to her for hours longer just because she had so much wisdom and so many things to say. And um,
Same.
it's powerful to know, like, you're not alone. Whatever your struggle is, it's so powerful to know that you're not alone. And I think that's what Darby really brought to this, is like, however your brain works is how your brain is supposed to work. And there's a reason for it, and it's okay. And so I thought that was really beautiful.
I did not know that clothes hurt you.
Yes, I hate clothing with passion. I definitely will get old and retire at a nudist colony.
Interesting.
Clothes are
So
so
how does it
painful. It's
hurt you?
ridiculous. It hurts my skin. It makes my skin itchy and crawly and horrible. And I have these dresses. I have these dresses that I call naked dresses, and they're like really sheer fabric. And like on days when my skin hurts, that's what I will wear, and that's the only thing I can wear. Um,
It's so
I don't know.
funny because, like, now thinking about it, like, just yesterday or the other day, I was wearing my Chiefs pants, because the Chiefs played Saturday. And I was wondering, I was sitting on the couch and my butt and my thighs were hurting from the fabric, I guess. And I was like, why is it so painful? Like, I had no idea.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I gravitate towards not wearing jeans. I want to wear leggings and or just dresses that you just don't have to do anything and they just barely touch your skin and they're just flowy. I
yeah,
gravitate towards those. But in Springfield, there was always a problem because it was always windy. So my husband's like, "Oh, you're wearing that dress, like those dresses again, that like you're showing your bottom to everyone." I'm like, "No, I'm holding it down, but it's like so comfy." And I thought it was just because it was comfy, not because of the pain. But now that you said it out loud, I'm like, "Oh."
yeah. It's interesting.
Um,
I don't know. A couple years ago, I coined the term naked dresses because I was like, I can't wear clothes today. I have to wear a naked dress.
that's so funny. I love that. I'm gonna steal that. Um, So, and then we moved into Nikki, who is a death doula. Her story of helping those in the end of life moment make it easier for everyone and allowing space for that to be present. So that was really, really cool. And then we had Rionda. where we have a person who went through a lot of mental issues and came out of the other side stronger. And then we go from that to Alex, having been in a car wreck at such a young age and having to deal with relearning herself and going through so much therapy, like finding her place in the world and discovering that not every concussion is the same for everyone. Her realizing there needs to be more research on this and then finding ways to put her mark on this and helping others navigate through these circumstances. That was really cool.
Yeah. So I met Nikki at a networking event in Kansas City, actually before I moved here. And she was standing outside and she was talking to someone else. And I have no idea. I think we ended up just like walking back to our cars together or something. And she was fascinating to me because I had never heard of a death doula. I did have doulas for both of my live births with my kids. And so finding someone who was helping people transition on the other side of things was so mind blowing to me because I feel like in our world, we spend so much time avoiding death, and death comes for us all. So why on earth are we afraid of it? Because it's a guarantee. You know, it's like one of the only guarantees in life. And so talking to her and getting her perspective on that and how important it is for the person who is in the process of transitioning and the people around them, and creating some place where everyone felt the comfort and where that transition was easeful. um, I just had never processed that that could be the case, and just a beautiful conversation with her.
I
um,
loved the big grandma part. It was so chilling. Like that's something that you just wouldn't hear unless, you hear it firsthand or, we broadcast it on the podcast.
yeah, yeah, just beautiful. And then with Rihanna, I think that it's so incredible that she has faced these demons. And kind of like me, art was my escape, art was my therapy. And so she has created that out of her poetry. And now she's become this published author who is making a difference with the words that she writes. And it's so beautiful to see that no matter where we are in our process, even in the process of still struggling, we can make a difference. And again, I feel like that's a place where a lot of us judge ourselves, because I know that for me, when I'm struggling, um, I tend to think, well, what do I have to give the world? And the truth is, I have a lot. I've lived a lot of life, um, and it's not just the truth for me. That is a universal truth, where if you've lived life, you have a lot to give. And it doesn't matter if you feel like you're still in the middle of your struggle, you still have value and you still have worth, and people need you. And I think that's very easy for us to forget. And so that's really what I took away from Rihanna is, even in the struggle, you still have worth. Even in the depths of the darkness, you still have value, and you can make a difference no matter where you are. And then Alex was fun. It's kind of funny because with all of the guests that we've had, I've had something very, very much in common with them. So because of my domestic violence situation, how long ago was that? 11 years ago. Um, I had a traumatic brain injury as well. And talking to her and finding where her story differed from mine. And then this summer, I went and painted a mural with another artist who had also had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident. And her story differs from both of ours. And um, the power of our brains is fascinating to me. I mean, that's why I got my certification in neurolinguistics because I really feel like the language that we use can change the makeup of your brain. And if you know anything about neural pathways and all of that, then you know that that's absolutely true scientifically. Um, and although I could probably spend hours talking about that because I'm just fascinated by it. But talking to Alex and seeing that other people have overcome situations that are so similar, and she's so young and has created this path where she is like just this powerhouse of I'm going to make people's lives better. And it's so beautiful that something so hard, because going through that in high school, like high school years are very volatile as it is. And then to add trauma on top of that, um, and to come out on top and say, no, this is not going to keep me down. This is going to give me a passion and a purpose, and I'm going to change other people's lives and help them to move forward through hard things. Just talking to her and seeing her passion and the power and the purpose that she has for the people that she works with now was so inspiring. And especially, she's younger than my oldest child. And so seeing her just so passionate and so brave, and it was beautiful. And I just absolutely loved that podcast.
And then we have Bond.
Yes.
So Bon was great to talk to as well. I loved how she took us through her historical moments and the resistance of being a journalist, and how um, far society and social media has helped be a part of that. She paved her own way into writing about what actually needs to be written and not just what people want writers to put out. So I thought that was fascinating to learn that she went through that and her struggles with that. She also has made incredible changes throughout the years, including, with the rape kits, where the police force tried to cover 200 rapists. So that was fascinating information. I think when I was sitting here listening to her, I was just like mouth dropped, like, we have something here. It almost seemed like just bigger than us, because it's like, when would you hear these stories? I mean, maybe some people aren't going to listen. There's going to be a lot of people who don't listen to our podcast, so they might never hear this story. But I would have never heard this story through the news because, I'm don't watch the Springfield news that closely. And even if I did back in the day, I didn't hear about any of this. So it's so cool that, we have people, so many different types of people sharing their history or what they went through. And it's like so vast that it's been really cool to be a part of. Um, but I think Bond's story and the other one that's going to be, I think, coming out after this episode. I won't say the name or anything, but I'm excited about that one too because that one was like she's still in the middle of it. So it's just the interviews that we've had is so mind blowing, and I'm just honored that we get to be a part of and that they chose us to use as the platform to share their stories on.
That's exactly how I feel. It is just so freaking beautiful that people are willing to share their stories with us. And I really think that we can create a movement. I really think that In the Black can be so much bigger than us because it's not about us. It's not about Aracelli and Shannon. It's about the fact that women take pain and alchemize that pain and create passion and purpose from it. And that is something that we do over and over and over and over again. Even when you look at the physical realm, like birth is the ultimate pain. They say there's not any pain that is more impactful than birth. And we create life out of that pain. And I think that as women, that's just what we do. We say, okay, this is really painful for me. Obviously, this has to be painful for other people. Let's see how we can create life out of this. And I think that's what this whole thing is about, is just bringing life, bringing joy, bringing peace, bringing passion, bringing people together to say we can create a better world. because of what we've gone through, because of what we've dealt with. Life can change, not just for us, but for the people around us, for the world, for however big our world wants to be. Like, we can create that change.
I think most of the stories that we've had on share the inspiring reminder that even in the darkest times, we can find the strength to break free, make change, and help others in the process, which is in our, outro in our podcast. I hope that this podcast is a must listen for anyone who has faced abuse, know someone who has, or is looking for to like better understand how to support those in need. And, I think ending with Fawn being our ninth one in the podcast was like a beautiful circle back to Janice's like first being on the podcast. Um, and then I think they're both like are setting the tone for many of our themes that have ran through our podcast, um, talking about resilience, transformation, and like advocacy in small ways or big ways. And I think we have a perfect starting point, although rough. I think it's been blossoming into something bigger than we envisioned. And I say rough because I mean, I still struggle with not, I think with holding back and like asking questions because I still think that I am not a great speaker or a great, um, I don't know. I get very uncomfortable. I've noticed. So here's two things I learned about myself I need to work on is I need to, for editing purposes, for our listeners, I need to do a better service to you guys because listening to the first episodes was so painful for me. I could not do it. I still, and this sounds so bad, I still have yet listened to our introductory episode. Like, it was just a quick, I don't even remember if I edited it, to be honest. But if I did, it was just a quick, like speed through, cut, paste, throw it out there. And I did not even listen to it. And then people were like, I listened to your first episode. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, it was cringe. I'm so sorry you had to listen to my voice. Like, oh, it's just, and we didn't have a lot of time to edit too, and, full-time jobs and everything. So it was just in our spare time throwing this out in the world. And with the other episodes, I'm starting to, I don't know what change happened, but maybe it's the more I'm spending editing where I've realized that, okay, I'm not scared anymore. Like I don't have that fear, whatever that was, holding me back to listen to it fully and play it back. So now I found myself, especially on the ninth one, Bonds one, where I could listen, skip through, edit. And now I'm going to go back and listen to it playing while I'm like doing laundry or something, working on something else, but I can like sit and listen to it because I listened to it so many times, but where I can listen to it in its full, how do you say that? Its entirety.
Mhm.
Um and then actually like catch things. Oh, I need to go back and edit that little thing because I noticed in Janice's episode, I was listening to it to recap for today's episode, and I left a part in there that should have been edited out, and I was just like so embarrassed. I was like, oh my gosh, I missed one. And I'm sure I missed 1,000 of them. So, I think starting new things, it's always muddy and dirty and not perfect. Um, but I think hopefully we're going to get better at cleaning things up. And then also the second thing was I noticed that I get very, I don't know what to call it. I think other people that we've had on the podcast can diagnose me, but I get very uncomfortable and my eyes move everywhere and I feel like my physical body moves everywhere and I just cannot just control myself and just stay in one position. So I need to work on that as well.
That's hilarious because I feel like you do the best job staying in one position, and I'm like, all over the place. So, and I don't care that I'm all over the place because I have a hard time staying still. Again, we go back to that neurodivergent episode, and I'm like, so if I sit in the same place for more than 15 minutes, I am in pain. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I'm totally okay with the fact that we move around because we're humans and sitting still for an hour is brutal. So I don't think that you should judge yourself for that at all. Because I can't do it. Um, but yeah, I've learned a lot. 10 episodes is crazy. Like I can't believe how quickly it's come together. Um, but I think my favorite memory from the 10 episodes is when we were just laughing uncontrollably and couldn't even start the episode because we just kept laughing. Um, and that's probably my favorite so far. But I also feel like we've had a lot of conversations, even outside of the podcast, with people that are just so impactful. And I don't know, it's amazing to get to know these women who are doing incredible things. And I'm so thankful that we have this opportunity to have them in our lives.
Oh man. So, do you have anything that you could reflect on with like things that you've noticed that you need to work on or things that you think you're like, "Dang, I'm really good at this."
Um, so let's see. I think that I'm not really a detail person. Um, that's something that I've known about myself for a really long time. Um, and so I think like diving into the conversations and making sure that we cover everything that we want to cover can be challenging for me. So I'm really glad that I have you to keep me on track because a lot of times I will just go off on some tangent and I'll be like, oh, what about this? Oh, but I want to find out about this. Let's just go down this rabbit hole. And I love the rabbit holes, but they're not necessarily what the podcast is about. And so I think that is probably an area that I can work on a little bit more. Um, and then the ums. Uh, I say well, so much, and learning how to speak clearly and to think about what I'm saying beforehand and pause instead of using those filler sounds because they're not even words. I think that would be very helpful. Um, as I do it again. And I'm just really excited to see where this goes. Obviously, 10 episodes is not a lot. It feels like we have done something huge. But when we look at the fact that we have so many women who are waiting to tell their stories and who want to have their portrait in the world to show the world what they're doing, I get so excited. And I can't wait to see where this goes.
Where should we tell them where it's going?
Yes.
Well, actually, I had a question. Have you listened to all the episodes, my friend?
Yes, I have listened to them. I typically on Thursday mornings will listen to them on my way to work. And
Oh, no
so,
way.
because I have a 45-minute drive to work, and typically once they're edited, they are a little less than 45 minutes. So I'm able to listen to them. It has been interesting to see our growth. I feel like our first episode was so brutal. Neither of us knew what we were doing, and it was very obvious. um, but also, it's kind of beautiful to look back on that and be like, okay, we're growing, we're here for it, and we're doing this thing, even though we have no idea what we're doing. And I think it's kind of awesome. I think that's where change is really made, is in those little moments where you're just like, okay, I guess I'm going to do it anyway. And you do. And that's where big things start. And I'm
To
just
add to
really
that,
excited. Hmm.
I feel like, to add to that, I don't know if we said this before, but Shannon was the one who was the, I guess she like wanted to push us off the cliff. And she's like, no, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do this. Schedule the date and let's do this. And I was like, but we're not ready. But we need to do this. But we need to have the song. But we need to have the artwork. But we need to have all this stuff. And she's like, no, launch it. Let's go. So I was like, but they're going to see like the raw stuff and the bad stuff. She's like, nope, we're going to just go for it. So I think, yeah, that was like the big. Even if we were ready, I feel like we would have still had those rough, the first interview would have been rough. It wouldn't have been cleaned up. It wouldn't have felt like it does now where we're like not camera shy, or we're more comfortable and it's like flowing easier. And like the first one, I was like, okay, long pause. I think even till Hazel's episode, or even after Hazel, that we still had like poor Hazel had to sit there and she would like tell her amazing story. And then there was like 5 minutes of pause. I'm like exaggerating, but it was just like an awkward pause. And we're like, we heard you, Hazel. We're just like reading through the questions right now. We will get back to you in like 10 minutes. So, where we, went from that to now we just kind of flow into the questions a little bit more. So that's been kind of cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe in pushing yourself off the cliff. Um, I think I think it's so easy to get lost in the preparation to the point that you never end up doing. And in my favorite book, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about how done is better than perfect. And that's something that I really try to live by is like, if I have the opportunity to get something done and do it to the best of my ability, like I'm not trying to slack off or just like slop something together. But if I have the opportunity to get something done, having it done is better than having it perfect. And when you live your life by that, then you do a lot more things. Whereas if you're trying to have everything perfect, you're never actually going to do anything because nothing in life is ever perfect.
Yeah, so actually it's funny that you say that, because ever since I got to Florida, I feel like I've been surrounded by people who just like shove me into uncomfortableness. Like, the podcast was one, and then I shared this idea with you, and you're like, nope, let's just get it started, because if we don't, we're not going to do it. And I was like, but we are. No, you're like, no, let's do it now. Because I grew up with, which is, I'm thankful for it, this is what I've been wanting to, and I feel like it goes back to like women needing permission to do things. And I feel like it's that, and also the push. Like, we are ready for it. This is meaningful. Why not just start? Um, and then I think growing up, I was always, I grew up in a household that was, you can't do anything right. Like, look at this. It's terrible. Redo the whole thing again. Like, it was always seeking perfection. And then growing up in Springfield, working for a boss who was like, no, but that's not good enough. Like, you should be more like this coworker. They do this great thing and they do that great thing, and like comparing. And that's, the thief of joy, the thief of like someone's authenticity and like being creative and how they can rise to be their best self. And that all just went hand in hand with like my childhood growing up in the workplace as an adult. It was the same thing. So I was like, okay, so I'm never good enough. I'm never going to be ready to make a change or take that next step or whatever. So I just felt so suffocated in that town. And I think many a times me and you have talked about how as soon as we got out of Springfield, we could breathe, and it's wild to think that a place could have that much of an impact on you. And it's not to say that Springfield is a terrible town. I don't say that at all. It's a great little town. It's just, I think the ties that we had to it, and you can speak to your story, um, and you have too. So, but yeah, I think it's like, you know, my family or my upgrade, my whole life was like from there, and it wasn't a good one, and I didn't know it wasn't good. You know, from the other episode with Bond, where it's like you we were talking about the Cosby Show, and it's like how you admire that, and like that's a fairy tale story and family that you just gravitate towards, and you wish you had, and it's just not real life. But then you meet these real humans that have that life, and you're just like, oh, I got screwed. Like you were saying the other day, I'm like, you placed those words better than I did, and like coming having. See, now I'm just talking endlessly. This is what I need to work on. What I was saying earlier,
No, I
but
love it. You're saying amazing things. Keep going.
so uh having all these guests on the episodes on the podcast has opened up my eyes, and I'm learning more about myself, as well as just learning about them, but also learning more and getting more insight about, you know, my upbringing, and how I grew up, and all the things that affected me, and why I am the way I am. So it's kind of like uniting with people that have been through the same thing, which is kind of what we want to bring out to the world, right? It's like you're not alone. There's even though you face these difficult things, like maybe you didn't know you were facing them, and listening to this, maybe, hey, you are facing them, so hey, get out or seek some help, or whatever it is. But going back to before I started on that tangent, what was I talking about? It was going back, oh, the Springfield, going back, it's just like growing up in that environment, that abuse, and that's all that I think Springfield was to me, and then being surrounded by people who, um, kept me at that, like level. And I was seeking out to surround myself with people who could lift me up, because that's what you read you have to do to kind of level up, and I wanted to do that, but I could just not find that support. And then as soon as I get to Florida, it's like you find all these people who just, they're like, hey, there's this great thing I heard, you should listen to it, or if you want this friend can connect you to it, and like, there's just so many connections, so many people that want to push you to do great things. And then, which is, why I reached out to you, is like, do it. And so I did it, and then here we are. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna have to
love
edit that
that.
whole thing out.
No, please don't. That was really good. Um, I love that because I think that a lot of people don't realize the power of our associations. And when, oof, I'm speaking to myself right now about particular things. When you spend your time with people, you do the things that those people do. You start to speak in the ways that those people speak. You basically create, how do we want to say this? Your mind starts to gravitate toward whatever is there. So I heard this saying once that was unhappy people talk about other people, average people talk about current events, and powerful people talk about the future. Something like that. That's not the exact wording. It was written way better than that. But that's always stuck with me when I'm looking at the people that I'm surrounding myself with. Like, am I talking to someone who is gossiping about other people? Am I talking to someone who has so little going on in their own life that their only thing that they can focus on is other people's lives? Am I talking to someone who is so enthralled in current events that they have no goals for their future? Am I talking to someone who is so up to date on what's happening in the workplace that they're not making moves to do anything better? Or am I talking to someone who is asking, what are your dreams? What are your goals? How are you pursuing that? What are you doing today to take steps to move forward, to be the best version of yourself? Who am I surrounding myself with? Because that will determine what my future looks like.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with this person and I was just kind of like, I just need to get out of Springfield, and I don't think they understood, and it was hard to kind of get into like this deep conversation about like what that meant because I didn't know what that meant for me anyways. But they were like, what makes you think, that you would find, happiness or whatever you're trying to find outside of here? Why couldn't you, do that here? Which makes sense in one aspect because I think that, there's so many things for everything. And I think it's like you make your day of like how you want to make it or whatever. But it's like when you spend so much time trying to do that, but all you are surrounded with is what you were just describing. It's like I can't, I want to talk about the future and everyone else wants to talk about like, "Oh, did you know what this person did?" And so, like, that's all we talk about, Um, and then people look at you like you might be crazy if you talk about the future, and it's like, "Oh, okay, this person's trying to, like, do this or that." Um, so yeah,
I had
sorry.
this epiphany moment when I was in Springfield, and this is probably going to upset some people. Um, but I was talking with my partner at the time, and he said, Shannon, have you even thought about what your accomplishments have been? And I was like, no, not really. And he challenged me to put together a list of the things that I had accomplished that year, which it was an amazing year. It was the year I started muraling. I had taken my kids to Hawaii. Like, just so many different things had happened that were dream come true type of things. And then I went and I met up with some people and I was telling them, oh my gosh, so over the past few days, I've made this list of my accomplishments and I'm so proud of myself. And they proceeded to say, oh, brag a little bit more and tear me down the entire time I was there. And I remember thinking at that moment, I don't belong here. I belong with people who will encourage accomplishment. I belong with people who want to inspire and motivate and do more. And that's one of the things that I absolutely loved about my business partner that I left um, the corporate world with. She still to this day, we were talking this morning and we send gratitude to each other and so like different things that we're grateful for, different things like that. And then on occasion we'll send, hey, I'm working on this through this coaching program, or I'm working on this. And so she sent me some worksheets yesterday, just like outlining, what do you want your life to look like? And I'm so thankful to this day that I found her, because I don't know that I ever would have recognized that there were people out there like her without her. Which that's a story for a whole nother day, because our story is crazy too. um, but I'm so freaking thankful that I did have a few people like that. And my best friend in Colorado, we've been friends since 2001, I think. Um, and she's like that too. She's always like, so what are you doing to fix this situation, Shannon? She's very matter of fact. And so I'll call her and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is happening in my life and it's so awful and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, so why aren't you fixing it if it's that awful? And I'm like, what? Aren't you just going to let me wallow in this? And she's like, no, bitch, get up. And I just really appreciate having people like that in my life who will call me out and say, hey, what are you doing right now? And I think finding those people is the best thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah. And I'm hoping to find more people like that in Florida. But it's been great. Um, and then doing this venture with you. So, let's talk about what's coming up in May. You
Yes.
take it away. You do it. You do the honors.
All right. So, um, I know that some of our listeners came to my Empower Her event last May, which was just a 1 day event where we painted and we wrote a letter to our younger selves, and we had a photo shoot, and it was just absolutely beautiful. We are taking that to a whole new level, and we will be doing an In the Black experience in Tampa in May. And I am so excited about what we are doing. All the details haven't been figured out quite yet, but we will be spending a whole weekend just working on ourselves and laughing and loving on each other. And we're going to be in an Airbnb right on the beach, and it's going to be amazing.
Yes. So we will send out applications and details about this. We should have that finalized in February.
Mhm.
So we'll have all of that out to you guys. So keep out on a lookout. We'll have several posts on Instagram, on all the socials. I did create a Facebook account that I don't know how to use. I don't know how to use any platform, to be honest. Um, but see, now I'm using all the as we learn to navigate these platforms, the more time I'm spending with them, the more I think I'm figuring things out, and then it turns out I didn't figure it out. But yeah, so stay tuned. See, that was another little rabbit hole I just went into. Stay tuned for all those details that will be happening and coming your way. We're really excited about it. I think we're going to have maybe a few connections that will come on board with us.
We will be coming out with more details on this as time goes by, and we will be opening it up to the public to register for our event the end of February. So we're really excited to have everything put together, and it's going to be an absolutely amazing experience. So we're looking forward to seeing what women come and how our lives change in that process. So I'm super excited about that event. Definitely stay tuned to see where we go with that and what we are going to be offering with that, because it's going to be very, very special. And then I just real quick, I want to recap. Um, if you look back at the past 10 weeks that we have been doing this, what do you say your biggest hits and peaks are? I do pits and peaks with my kids on Sundays where they give me the best and the worst parts of their week. Just curious, if you're looking at the 10 weeks, what would you say your pits and peaks have been?
In regards to each episode, like guest or working on the podcast in itself, like the whole project.
The whole project as a whole over 10 weeks. What were the hardest parts of it, and what have been the best parts of it for you?
That's hard. A way to prep me before this. Um,
You're welcome.
uh, yeah. So the hardest part, I think I already covered it, but I guess I will just go again because it really is. It was having to sit with the fact that we created this podcast and it was out in the world and my voice was out there with it. And having to listen to my voice, having to look at myself, having to, in the behind the scenes, the things that you're struggling with, the things you're not ready, the things that are not flowing well, all the things. And as you're drawing something or painting something, all the imperfections. And other people won't be able to see that, but it's there. So it was so hard for me to know that there was a product out there that wasn't perfect, and my voice was out there, and I can't stand it, so I can't imagine other people listening to it. I'm so sorry for everyone who cannot stand my voice as well. So that was the hardest, the deepest pit, the hardest was the initial beginning of it. And I think what'd you call the other thing?
Peaks, pits and
The
peaks.
peak.
Yes.
The peak of it was really having, I think, getting the ball rolling, and the more we had guests on, the more I can like start to get out of my own way and start to learn about these different people. But I think the last few people, so I really apologize for the first few people that we had on. We should just have them on again. But the last few people, their stories that they shared and how we felt more comfortable in interviewing them and being more present in the moment of interviewing them was I can be present, so I can not spend my time looking for the next question. Um, so I could absorb more, learn more, and hearing these fascinating stories. I love listening to history, like stories based on true, wait, events based on true stories, something like that. So listening to these stories that are not out in the world, and we got to listen to those was really cool. And I think becoming more self-aware and learning things about myself was together the best peak. So as the podcast is coming together, I feel like we're coming together. And so we're starting to peak. If that makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely.
collectively. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. Um,
What about you?
so for me, I think the pits has been realizing that I sat on this for years. Um, so I think the first time that I posted a Facebook post about In the Black was probably like 2.5 years ago. And I was like, hey, I want to paint some people who have made a difference if you want to nominate someone. And I had 30 something women who wanted to be painted. And I sat on it and I didn't do anything with it. And seeing how quickly we've created the podcast and forcing myself to actually paint this time has been probably a pit and a peak at the same time, because it's like um, realizing that I could have started this earlier and that I was just sitting on it out of fear and how much I've allowed fear to control my life. But also that peak of I'm overcoming it now. Like I'm doing what I know I'm supposed to do now. And even though it's late, even though I feel like I could have started sooner, I'm doing it now. And that's the important part. And so I think it's both my pit and my peak at the same time.
I love that. I think, yeah, that goes back to like not wanting to listen to the episodes and getting to the point where like I should have started to listen to the episodes when they first launched, but it's that fear, man. That fear gets you.
Yeah.
Um, just overcoming that fear and seeing my growth into like, okay, I'm listening now to the podcast as we should. It's our baby, it's our project. But that fear is so real. Just like you don't, it's just so paralyzing, you know? You have something so beautiful
Mhm.
and it's hard to act on it. It's hard to take those few steps forward. So, yeah, I think we're both making the steps together, which is, I think, less frightening having someone there by your side. So, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. I am so incredibly grateful that you made that call. Like I said at the very beginning, I don't know how quickly or if I would have started if it hadn't been for that. So I appreciate you listening and following your heart. I think that's amazing. One last question before we stop,
Oh no,
because when you look at your life, what does being in the black mean to you?
I can't. Can I phone Bon and be like, hey, I need you to put my thoughts and what I'm about to say into a more what I'm actually trying to say sentence. It's overcoming toxicity. After years of being told I was worthless, I made the life-changing decision to leave a toxic family dynamic, choosing my well-being and future over the past. So, tell us, Shannon, tell the audience what in the black means to you.
For me, being in the black means living in peace and developing my passion and walking in my purpose. And so I don't believe in happiness. I believe that we should be led by peace, because happiness comes and goes. Whereas you can have peace through any circumstance and any situation if you know that you're doing the right thing. And I think that when you live with passion and purpose, you find that peace. And so being in the black means having that inner peace and just knowing that I am doing what I'm meant to be doing. And that's what being in the black means to me.
That's so good. Yes, what she said. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of In the Black. I hope today's story left you feeling inspired and reminded of the incredible strength that lies in each of us, reminding us all that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way to find light in the world.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe and share In the Black with another woman who could use a little encouragement. Together, we're building a community of passion, purpose, and power. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and remember your story matters. Your choices change things, and being your most authentic self can and will change the world around you.